Children with Disabilities, Education and Self-Perception by Phelps, Monique, Latif, and Christina. Overview. It is estimated that around 1 billion people suffer from some sort of disability. Between 93 million and 150 million of those people are children. A disabled person is defined as someone who has long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments which, in conjunction with attitudinal and environmental barriers, may prevent them from fully and effectively participating in society on an equal basis to other people. People with disabilities are affected both directly and indirectly due to their condition. Direct discrimination due to disability occurs when someone is treated unfairly solely due to their condition. Indirect discrimination occurs when a rule or policy designed for everyone disproportionately affects those with disabilities. Education. Children with disabilities have lower rates of initial enrollment in schools, and if they do begin education, they are more likely to drop out. They have a much higher risk of experiencing bullying and harassment in schools. This denies them a safe learning environment and creates a negative atmosphere at school. Students experience prejudice and unfair treatment from peers and teachers due to their mental and physical differences. When students are forced into an unwelcoming environment, they don't see school as a safe place that facilitates quality education. Education around the world. 90% of disabled children don't go to school in lower and lower middle income countries. These children are 10 times less likely to have access to a proper education. Around the world, children with disabilities are excluded from education and sometimes isolated from the community. For example, in Eastern Europe, disabled children are almost 17 times more likely to be institutionalized than their non-disabled peers. Students still experience barriers to education, such as buildings with unsuitable accommodations for those with physical disabilities. This includes limited access to ramps or methods of going to and from school. Effect of poverty on education. Those who experience poverty already start with less access to quality education. They are at a higher risk of malnutrition, dangerous living conditions, lack of clean water, and poor health care. If their basic needs are neglected, it's much more challenging to ensure that disabled students can go to school regularly. Children might even develop other ailments due to their situation when they can't receive proper health care and guidance. Many of these children may have rare or under-researched conditions which limit their access to medication and doctors that understand their problems. Self-esteem. Children with disabilities often deal with feelings of societal exclusion and issues with self-confidence. Adolescence is the time of finding who you are and where you fit in, but children with physical and mental differences are ostracized and can have difficulty finding people who understand them. This is related to how Pauline Breedlove in The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison deals with her disability. She preferred to think of her broken foot as the end of her lovely beginning. She received different treatment and felt excluded from the other children because she couldn't experience childhood in the same way that they did. Microaggressions. The everyday occurrences that disabled children experience shape their perception of their disability. Microaggressions could include, but are not limited to, children being made fun of or mocked for the way that they talk, move, or react in certain situations. These seemingly minute interactions can severely damage self-esteem and cause an adolescent to become ashamed of what makes him or her different. Children with disabilities are put in a more vulnerable situation when it comes to violence, abuse, and exploitation. They often don't have a voice to fight back and stand up for themselves. Intersectionality. Children with disabilities also identify with other groups. This could include religion, gender, race, ethnicity, etc. These children are not solely defined by their disabilities, and their other distinctions can affect how they develop and fit into society. Girls with disabilities often receive additional discrimination and maltreatment due to cultural and societal sentiments. The additional prejudice due to gender causes girls with disabilities to be seen as non-productive and non-essential members of society in many countries around the world. To find out more, we talked to a local expert who works directly with disabled children.
How is education more difficult for disabled children?
Being in school as a disabled child is harder because it's harder to sit in class for longer periods the way other kids do, to physically tolerate being in their chair that long, being able to look up at the board and have the motor skills to transfer that information down on paper, that sometimes writing is just a huge challenge, and so adaptations have to be made to have notes taken for them or be able to take pictures of information. And so each kid basically has to follow a 504 plan or an IEP in order to get the services that they need to be successful, because education is harder for them.
Are disabled children less driven to succeed because of their disability?
It depends on the support system that's in place. If they come from a family, an environment that is rich in support and resources, then no. But there are many kids that come from a place of poverty that have disabilities, and that makes it much harder to not have resources available to them and the support system in place.
How does disability negatively affect a child's childhood experience?
I would say 2 reasons. One would be that if a child is in a wheelchair or using some sort of assisted device to get places, and there's not the ability for them to be able to get somewhere, if there's no ramp or their chair can't fit inside of a doorway to go to a play, just any type of amusement park, any of those types of fun childhood things that are easy for kids to just go ahead and do, go to the zoo, that a kid can't be part of because they can't get in. And another way would be just sort of their self-esteem, that they feel like they're not the same as everybody else, and so they're watching groups of other kids be able to do things that they can't do, and they feel really sad that they're not able to participate.
What needs to be done? Right now, children with disabilities do not have the same access to resources, especially in underdeveloped countries. Since there are so many disabled children suffering from a lack of support in their lives from both an educational and emotional perspective, we need to implement more ways to allow these children to receive support, especially if they are in poverty. A major reason as to why disabled youth often feel emotionally stressed is the fact that their peers tend to treat them unfairly. This includes bullying and exclusion, among other factors that make disabled children feel unsettled among their peers. Perhaps the reason why children tend to treat their disabled peers poorly is simply because they don't understand the differences that make these children who they are. A solution to this problem is to put more effort into educating able-bodied children on the circumstances and situations of those who are disabled, so instead of ostracizing young children, we'll be more accepting of their disabled acquaintances. Simply giving these disabled children the chance to proceed themselves without feeling disadvantaged because of their disabilities will benefit millions of children around the world.